Hi, have you ever felt left out in a playground? Have you felt excluded for whatever reasons? Inclusion is important because um, if people are excluded, it can cause bullying, lack of self-esteem, poor mental health, and social isolation. In this video, we're going to explore 4 types of equipment that could be made accessible, or possibly people might have bought the equipment slightly differently or got it positioned in order to foster greater inclusion. Hi, my name's David. I'm a senior lecturer of special needs. I'm a parent of children who've got additional issues. I struggled at school as well. Now let's explore the 4 pieces of equipment, why they're not as inclusive as they could be, and what could be done to make them more inclusive. So let's take this piece of equipment to start with. It's a swing. There are 4 swings here. They're in an open area, and if you look at the flooring, take a pause for a moment and think about the accessibility issues and why they might not be as inclusive as they could be. So let's look at the flooring. If we look at the type of flooring, people who have got mobility issues might struggle because the path is rough. If somebody's in a wheelchair or got a stick, it might cause them problems actually physically moving from the playground area, the harder surface, to the actual swing themselves. Then, if we look at the swing, there are 4 swings. They're on metal chains and they're all at the same height. The seats themselves seem to be narrow. Now, potentially somebody who's got balance issues might struggle if they don't understand and they don't have an awareness of where their body actually is. They might struggle to get on the seating. People who have got mobility issues, for instance, in a wheelchair, there's no clear way where they can actually park the wheelchair in order to move from the wheelchair onto the swing without it moving and then causing potential problems. If you also look at the chain as well, that might cause people some sensory issues as well, because they might not like the feel of the chain. So what can be done to potentially improve the inclusion and accessibility of the swings? Some things are slightly more costly, and some things are slightly cheaper or more cost effective. First of all, let's look at the actual physical access of getting to the swing. I get it that there needs to be a soft area just in case people fall down, but it could be that actually there could be some form of platform, ramp, pathway that's harder, that enables people with mobility issues to get to the actual swing area. Now, if they need assistance and there's assistance around, they can then that person can potentially support the person moving from or transitioning from the their wheelchair, or if they're using walking sticks, the adult might be able to support them. But in this case, again, there's simply a challenge in physically moving from the hard surface area to actually getting to the swings. Then let's look at the actual seating themselves. Well, potentially, what could happen is that that there could be a way of making the seat, or at least giving one of the 4 seats, a slightly wider area for somebody's to sit on. There doesn't appear to be at all from these swings the ability to adjust the height. of the swings. So again, when purchasing any equipment, it's worth considering if things are height adjustable. Now, also, let's look at the sensory issues. People might have some sensory issues, but also, to be fair, this is an open area. The sky is cloudy, but I'm not sure how hot the area actually gets. So irrespective of if somebody has sensory issues in terms of just don't like touching the metal, the actual metal swings themselves, the chains could get hot. So one simple solution of actually basically overcoming two issues, which is the sensory issue of touching the metal and also the heat, would be to put round a some form of cloth that meets health and safety standards. That means that the chains might not get hot, and there could be people who are sensitive to heat, and also also overcoming the issue of people not necessarily liking the feel of the chain. So the steps, the challenge for this particular swing doesn't seem to be that people have put the foresight and the thought and the planning to make these things accessible. Realistically, it doesn't appear from the picture that they spoke to the people who were installing the potential accessibility issues. These could have easily been overcome and addressed. Now let's look at a second picture. There are a range of balls in a large basket. There are very large, what appear to be yellow or green tennis balls. And there are also basketballs which have, and the basketballs themselves have multicolors. So one of the ones that I can see is green, yellow, red, and pink. Another one seems to be pink, again, yellow, green, a light blue, a dark blue, and a couple of other blues as well, with red stripes going around. Another type of ball that I can see is a football that is black and white. Now, let's look at the games of playing ball. Think about when you play ball and when you've played any form of catching type of games. Number one, in order to catch, you need fine motor skills. In other words, really, really small detail movements, and also gross motor skills, the bigger movements. You also need to track. Now, the beauty of the football is there's a contrast in color between the black and the white. What I'm not clear about is the texture of the ball. But if somebody's trying to track, in other words, look and see the actual ball themselves, then there's a clear contrast in color so they can actually spot the ball. With the green ball, it might be harder for people to, I'm not saying tracking, but in terms of like just if when people are playing a game and they say catch the green ball, well, the pupils around might not realize, or the adults around might not realize that the children are colorblind. So the reason why I picked up on the colors of the basketball that's green and red is that actually when choosing the colors and when you're actually playing a game, make sure that you factor in that some kids and people might actually be colorblind. And so make it very, very clear when you're using those games and those balls that actually that people might not see the colors as well as you do, or you might be colorblind yourself. The texture of the basketball is, it's got bumps, it's not exactly indentations, but it appears to be, it supports grip. So for instance, when you're playing a game, let's say basketball outside, and it might be raining, it supports the grip. The tennis ball seems to be the larger tennis ball seems to be a bit furry. One thing that isn't clear though, and when you're buying balls for inclusion, is the weight of the balls. How heavy are the actual balls in order for people to catch them? So in order to make ball games, catching games, throwing games more inclusive, it's worth considering and utilizing different sizes of balls, different colors of balls, and different textures. Because again, and going back over it, people might have issues with the tracking, the weight, the actual physical gripping of the balls themselves. In order to make ball games more inclusive to start with, it might be worth using, let's say, larger balls that are lighter, that have got clearly contrasting colors, and then developing the person's skills and refining their fine motor skills and gross motor skills so they can use smaller balls and smaller balls and smaller balls if the situation allows. You've got to factor in again the tracking. Then let's go on to this. It's a basketball court with two hoops. The two hoops are on a singular pole, and they're in a clearly open space on a hard basketball court. Now, from an inclusion perspective, there might be people, it's a hard service, so that's lovely, people who have got mobility issues, potentially in a wheelchair, or who might use sticks or crutches, they can physically navigate the hard surface. That doesn't appear to be a problem from the photo. But the basketballs seem to be, sorry, not the basketballs, the hoops seem to be at a fixed height. So now, as an anecdote, taking off from a slightly different tangent, I used to play basketball. I'm 1.77 m or about 5'11". And when I was at school, I was that height. I still, although I'm, let's say, average or slightly above average for where I was growing up, height-wise, I struggled getting the basketball in because of height-wise. Now, I would struggle with that. So if you look at somebody who's potentially doesn't have the actual reach or the potential strength to get the ball up to that area, one potential way for making the basketball more inclusive is to, when purchasing, have the ability to change the heights of the hoops. And if I'm looking at the actual poles themselves, there could potentially be a way of putting the basketball hoops, or how they're framed, on a ratchet-based system to then change it. That would enable a more inclusive area. Now, again, with the basketball hoops, the board, and I'm not a basketball player, so for any of you basketball people, please let me know what the actual right term is. But the board at the back that the hoop is attached to, it's all white. There isn't any reference point of like the black like background in the background of where the hoop roughly is. So it's that black border, or that border, is useful as an aiming point. So again, what they haven't done there is enabled an aiming point for the balls to come down. Also, potentially, if you look at the hoops themselves, I'm going to make an assumption, it might be wrong, that the hoops are a standard size. Another way of making it more inclusive is, and more accessible for people, is to make the hoops bigger, or at least, let's say, one of the hoops, because they're opposing on the opposing side, so I assume that there are two courts there. Make the hoops slightly bigger to then enable people who might not have the ability to be use a standard basketball, a greater opportunity to be included. Now, actually, that brings me back to, and I'm sorry, it brings me back to the previous photo of the balls. And I might have mentioned this, but it comes down to the weight of the balls as well. You might, when you're playing certain games, certain pupils might not be as strong for whatever reasons. So what might be worth doing is actually getting, let's say, the basketball or the ball, which is the same physical size, but actually checking if you can get it slightly lighter. Or alternatively, it might be worth considering who the size of hands that of the pupils. So it could be that actually you've got, in let's say older year groups, the average hand size is slightly larger. So what you want to do is you actually want to get smaller balls or larger balls to accommodate people's ability to actually grip that ball and successfully catch and throw it, because that's ultimately the purpose of, or hit it. That's the purpose of the balls. So again, with the when people are playing basketball, it could be that when people, I'm sorry, moving back to the photo of the basketball, it could be, rather than playing a game with a standard size basketball, to actually play the basketball with a smaller ball in order to enable the people to have a higher chance of getting the ball in, because it doesn't have to be, because it can be slightly less accurate, because it's got more scope for actually getting physically in the space. What you're doing, what that's actually doing is enabling people to develop the memory on getting the shot, on where their muscle memory is. And what you're doing is, by using potentially a smaller ball, they're getting that muscle memory and they're getting that success in with the ball in order to get it in. With a smaller ball, they're feeling that the people are feeling better, they're feeling stronger, they're feeling more confident. And then bit by bit, to make it more inclusive, you introduce a slightly larger ball and a larger ball and a larger ball until you get to the standard size, in this case, basketball. The same principle would apply for football, baseball, any other type of sports. Finally, we're moving to a playground. Within the playground area, there is playground equipment, and there's the whole area is on what appears to be soft tarmac. There is a board on the left-hand side that's green, that has a maze that kids can play and track. Now, and basically it's like a little maze where it's like, like follow the yellow path or green path, and where do you get to? The challenge though with this particular thing is it's at a set height, so, and also it's on a slightly rougher area. It's not on that soft area. So the challenge is that if somebody, again, has got mobility issues, or has got is visually impaired, they're not going to be able to see or access that particular pathway and that particular model that's there. Well, a very, very simple, practical way of doing this is either potentially making the board slightly bigger. The cost might be slightly increased, but actually I can't see how it costing that much more by increasing it by an extra 6 inches or 30 centimeters. It's also, they could make it slightly lower as well, and they could also change the angle so that people can access it and actually physically get closer to it. Also, as I'm looking at the picture as well, and I'm going to go slightly further in, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, there you go. It appears, if we're looking at the picture here, it seems to be 2D. Now, in order, again, to enable people potentially who are visually impaired to actually still track what's going on, it might be good or better for it to be raised. So there's more of a 3D element. It could be that also the maze type of area could be indented so that one particular pathway is raised. So in this particular case, there are yellow pathways, green pathways, pink pathways, and purple pathways. It might be that the yellow ones are dotted or raised in indentations. It could be that the green ones have got a thinner line. The purple ones have long type of dashes. That it wouldn't take that much to make it more accessible for people. And to be honest about it, this could be done with a glue, to be fair, a glue stick. If you've got like the heated glue that you've got, you can actually get the heated glue and actually do dots going along one particular area and then dashes going along another, vertical lines going along another, and horizontal. As I move to the right, there is I think the best way to describe it is it's like a climbing type of area that's got ridges as you go along, and in order to support and then it's got a bit of a like wobbly bridge, and then again you've got like pieces of you've got like a ramp going up again or coming down. The challenge for this is, unfortunately, it's not accessible again for people who've got mobility issues or somebody who's in a wheelchair. Now, judging by the space that they've got here, what they potentially could have done is reduced the angle of the ramp when people are getting up on the wobbly bridge. And so what that would then enable people to do who are potentially in a wheelchair, it would enable them to go up that ramp, go on the wobbly bridge, and then come down. Again, you've got health and safety to take in consideration, so it might be adult supervision. But this particular area doesn't seem to have that level of flexibility. Also, again, it seems to be fixed. So another way to get around it, depending upon which cohort of children are around and which people are around, is to actually have the ramps have quick release for the ramps. So as I'm coming in, it looks like actually they're nailed in or screwed in. But judging by the way the wood actually is, it's entirely possible to get quick release items in there to replace the ramps that go on the wobbly area, to then enable people who've got mobility issues, again, who use crutches or sticks, to then go up that ramp. Now, let's have a look at one more area as well. What I'm doing is I'm moving ever so slightly to the right, and there's a balancing area. There's a balance, and I'm focusing on a balancing beam that doesn't look, it's off the ground by probably, I would say, half a meter, if that. Although it's probably about, I don't know, 20 centimeters wide. I'm not sure, for those people in America or who use Imperial, I'm not sure how wide 20 centimeters is. I would say 8 inches, give or take. The challenge there is you've got kids who might have balance issues for whatever reason. For instance, on a personal basis, I know some children who have got balance issues as a result of having cancer and surgery, and there are other kids that I know who have been on medication and feel unstable. Now, what that does is that's creating social exclusion, because the kids might want to balance on there, but then in order for them to use that equipment, they might have to rely on the adult, which might be embarrassing. They might have to rely on their friends or the people around. Again, it's causing that social exclusion. Judging by the equipment overall that they've actually done here, what they could quite easily have done, because it's a phenomenal playground, to be fair, what they could quite easily have done is put bars and balance type of bars up. So for those children who wanted support and who've got balance issues. So for those children who are confident and don't have issues with mobility, what they can do is they can go up themselves. They wouldn't have to use the bars around. But actually, for those children who've got balance issues and want to join in, they could put guide rails in. And again, judging by this playground and the amount of money that's potentially being spent on this, that seems to be an oversight. So there's small, if you're going to purchase equipment, and this could be for a school playground, it could be for a leisure facility, it could be for a hotel where you have children. If you're going to spend the money, it's worth really considering all of your audience and speaking to people to factor in everybody, because, and drawing this to a close, small changes can make a big difference to how the children perform and feel, how the staff feel as well, and also how the parents. The ability to be included would reduce bullying, it reduces that isolation, and it improves self-esteem. If you're working in a school or a leisure facility, by enabling and creating greater inclusion, the consequence, as well as improving the self-esteem from a purely paperwork, bureaucracy type of perspective, what you're doing is you're reducing the complaints, you're reducing the issues and challenges that the children are facing. And that means that every time that a child isn't happy, is feeling isolated, there's the potential for the staff to have to deal with issues that they wouldn't, that they're not planned for taking. So it might take them 10, 15, 20 minutes to deal with an issue over, I can't access the ball, I can't do this, and it's creating distress, and that's taking away the staff's, taking the staff away from their core aim of being in the playground, enabling kids to play a game. So that's time that's really not factored into the day, but has to be taken into consideration. It could also mean that by making the equipment more inclusive and making those subtle changes, thinking about the balls, that means that you're not actually filling out health and safety forms, you're not filling out accident reports. Simply by buying a few extra larger balls, it could mean the children are tracking the ball slightly better, they're not getting hit, and overall it has a compound effect to improve everybody's quality of life and overall the performance. Thanks very much for your time. It would be great to know in the comments your ideas on how you make and have made your playgrounds, your play areas more inclusive, accessible. And let's not forget, by working together, we can make the world a far more accessible and inclusive place, and a much better place for everybody to live. Thank you very much.